the southern flank of Saudi Arabia in Yemen with the Houthis. And the Houthis, over the years, especially since 2015, and with the war waged by Saudi Arabia to dislodge them from from power, that failed, and the Houthis have become far more strengthened. So that has given Iran the opportunity to actually push forward this agenda of power projection. The Houthis are a proxy through which the Iranians are now trying to project power into the maritime space, which is the Red Sea, the Arabian Sea, and present itself as a major, if you will, stakeholder in regional security by creating these crises. And it's power projection, consolidating Iran's sphere of influence in the region, but also using the crises to force the United States to offer concession, to extract concessions on sanctions. They want sanctions relief at the end of the day, whether it's the war in Gaza, whether it's the attacks from Syria, the activities of Hezbollah, the attacks from Shia militias in Iraq on U.S. bases. It could be any one of these or a combination of that. The strategic goal behind that is to extract concessions from the United States and at the same time position itself as a major stakeholder in regional security.
Doctor, where Saudi Arabia, UAE, they stand in this whole thing going around there?
So that's a great question. I think that they have a conundrum. They have a major dilemma, which is that how do you avoid a bigger regional conflagration, a broader conflict in the region that will undermine their national security, particularly their geoeconomic interests in the region, and still deal with the threats from Iran. Clearly, they do not like the expansion of Iranian influence and the ability, the growing ability of Iran to be able to exploit the weaknesses in the Arab world to its advantage. But they have they lack a strategy. If you notice that, and this became very clear after their failure of their military mission in Yemen, they failed to dislodge the Houthis from what is sort of the core of Yemen that runs from the Saudi border all along the Red Sea down to the port of Aden. Though the port of Aden is still not in the Houthi control, it's still with Saudi and UAE-backed forces that represent the internationally recognized government. But that government does not have a whole lot of authority in Yemen. In fact, there was an effort by the Saudis and the Yemenis to prevent the Houthis from taking the major port in the Bab el-Mandab, near the Bab el-Mandab, in the Red Sea called Udaydah. And ultimately, they had to cede the control of that to Houthi forces because they just lacked the military wherewithal. So they're in a very difficult situation. Mind you that before this conflict began on October 7 with the Hamas attack in Israel, Saudi Arabia was joining UAE in trying to normalize relations with Israel.
Iran.
That whole thing got torpedoed. So they are dependent on the United States to deal with this issue. But at the same time, you see reports of Saudi officials basically saying to the United States that, could you exercise restraint in how you deal with the Houthis, because we don't want to go back to a state of hostilities. So for the past year or so, there's been this uneasy calm on the Saudi-Yemeni border and with the war inside Yemen. And so they don't want a reversal of that because all of a sudden they become vulnerable to drone and ballistic missile attacks. So the Houthis are emerging as, we talk about Hezbollah in Lebanon as the premier proxy of Iran. But I think that the Houthis are in close second place. In fact, I would say that if they are not deterred, if there is no way to roll them back militarily, then in years to come, they may become like an equal to Hezbollah, just on the southern flank of the region.
So, Dr. Bokhari, so just explain, please, a little bit more, then we can jump to the next topic. Houthis, do you think, suppose Houthis take over the port, like at the in port of Aden, do you think they have a capability to create a blockade in the 18-mile wide Bab el Mandab? They have a capability of that. Assume they take it over.
I
Is
don't
it sort of concern like that in the world?
I don't think they can blockade it. I don't think they have the capability to do that. That requires a massive navy that can
Yeah.
compete with international forces. You mentioned that India is involved in this as well. The US is definitely involved. We just had a clash overnight with US naval forces sinking three of four Houthi attack boats that were targeting a ship belonging to the Danish company called Maersk that is continuing to use the Red Sea for ferrying the goods that it is supposed to with its container ships. So I don't think that's the case. And I don't know if the Houthis have the ability. They certainly would like to control Aden or Aden as in English. But if even if they did somehow gain influence or control over it, it would just increase their ability to harass ships using asymmetric warfare that we're seeing. This is not a state conventional navy that's doing this. But yes, it would be a strategic disaster for the international community if that were to happen. But they won't be able to blockade it because they just do not have that kind of force.
Yeah, but see, then there is a question that you mentioned about harassing, quote unquote. Harassment they can even create even now also, so what is the counter actions to stop that? Because see, the thing is that this Liberian ship was attacked by the drones. I mean, so drones have very, nowadays anybody can create drones and do a lot of things. So how do you see things are coming up in coming year? I mean, is it going to create a big conflict against Yemen, where the international forces, do you see anything happening like that?
Well, I doubt that the United States and the international community is interested in another conflict in the Middle East.